We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 12a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara had said that if a person opens up an entrance into a mavui, and it's an entrance that was already there, it was just sealed up, so he's reopening it, so then the people of that mavui are not able to protest. And Rava said on the previous Amud, that's only true if it was sealed up, it was not completely sealed, they didn't break down the doorpost, they didn't completely take off the door frame. However, if it was completely sealed up, then Rava says they are allowed to protest if he tries to make that as a new entrance into the mavui. And Abai says to Rava, there's a brisa that supports what you're saying. The brisa says as follows: Bayis sasum. Let's say you have a house that's closed up. Yesh lo dalet amos. It does have 4 amos. However, again, paratz es petzimov. Let's say they take away the entire frame, they completely seal up the house. So then ein lo dalet amos. So then it doesn't have dalet amos. That's the same distinction that Rava was making. And similarly, bayis sasum. If you have a house that's closed up, eino metame kol svivav. It's not going to be tame surrounding it. Paratz es petzimov. But again, you take away the entire frame of the doorpost. You totally seal it up. Metame kol svivav. Then it is going to cause tumah in the surrounding area. And Rashi explains, Bayis Sasa means Shahayalo Pesach L'Chatzer. There was an entryway into the courtyard. V'sasma, when it was sealed up. Yesh lo Dalet Amos. There's still a halach of Dalet Amos, meaning B'chalukas HaChatzer, meaning if they divide up the Chatzer, we say that the person who has that entrance can get 4 Amos in front of the entrance. Im Bo Lachlik, if they want to divide, Ki'ilu Pasuach, it's the same thing as if that door was open. And then we said Eino Metame Sevivav. We said again, if you have a house that's closed off, it is not going to be Tame surrounding. Ela Keneged HaPesach, rather only by the doorway. The door is still considered to be there in Meis Pesocho if the dead body is there. However, Parat says Petzimov, if it's completely sealed, you've taken off the entire doorpost, the whole frame of the door, Hareo Kekever, then it's considered a kever already. It's like a sealed area with a mace, and that has a different halacha. There we say that the surrounding area is Tame. V'chachamim timu es sevivos hakever dalet amos. The Chachamim say 4 amos around the kever is Tame, and the reason why the Chachamim say that is Kadesh lo yikravu osei taharos ad hakever v'yahilo. So that way people who are dealing with things that are pure should not get so close to the kever and then accidentally they'll make like an oel, a tent over the tumah v'la'avadatayu, and they're not going to realize. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba Bar Bar Chana says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Mevoos ha-mefulashos l'ir acheres. If you have alleys that are open into another city, it's a way to travel to this other city. Ubikshu b'nei ho'ir l'sosman, and the people of the city, they want to close off that travel route. B'nei oso'ir ma'akvin alein. The people of that city can stop them from closing it. And the Gemara says, Lomi boy kileka darka acharina dema'akvin. Now, we don't even need to say in a situation where there's no other route to that city that certainly they can stop them from stopping up that route. Even if there's another road, another way to get there, still they can stop them from closing this road. Mishum de Rav Yehuda Marav. It's because of what Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, Yamar Meitzer Shechziko Bo Ravim also lekalkalo. He said that if you have a path that the public uses, you're not allowed to ruin that. And the Gemara continues, Kid Rav Gidel, it's like what Rav Gidel said. The Yamar Rav Gidel said, Ravim Sheberu Derech Liatzman. If the public chooses a path for themselves, Mashaberu Beru, whatever it is that they chose, so the public has already established this as a way of traveling, and therefore it's something that they can prevent. They can prevent it from being closed off. Rashi says, Le'ir acheres, lederech ir acheres, again it goes to the road of another city. Ubikshu b'nei ho'ir shahamavoos ba. Now the people of the city where the alleys are in, l'sosman me'acharem, they want to close it. B'nei oso ir ha'acheres, so the people of the other city, ma'akvin alein, they can stop them. Shekvar huchzaku l'katzer darkon, because they already use us as a shortcut, derech osan hamavoos, through those alleyways. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ravanan, Amar Shmuel. Ravanan says that Shmuel says, Mevoos ha-mefuloshin l'Rishos HaRabim. If you have alleyways that open into a Rishos HaRabim, into a public thoroughfare, uvikshu b'nei mevoos lahamid lohen delosus, and the people who live in the alleyways, they want to put doors on their alleyways. B'nei Rishos HaRabim ma'akvin aleim. The people of Rishos HaRabim can stop them from doing so. The idea is that when the Rishos HaRabim becomes very crowded, sometimes people overflow into the adjacent alleys, and that's why it would not be beneficial for the people of Rishos HaRabim that there should be doors in those alleys. And the Gemara continues, Savar Mina, initially they thought, Hani Mili B'Dalet Amos. That's only true of the first Dalet Amos of the alley, meaning the Dalet Amos, the 4 Amos closest to the Rishos HaRabim, so maybe that only belongs to the Rishos HaRabim, and they can stop them from putting up doors over there. Kid Rabbi Zera Amar Rav Nachman, that would follow what Rabbi Zera said that Rav Nachman said, the Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Rav Nachman, because Rabbi Zera said that Rav Nachman said, Dalet Amos, Hasmuchos L'Rishos HaRabim, Ki Rishos HaRabim, Dami, and the 4 amos that are near the Rosh Hashanah have the same status as the Rosh Hashanah, so that's what they thought. But veloi, but it's not really true. Hasam linyan tumah, over there, when we talk about the Dalet Amos, that's in terms of the halachas of tumah. The halacha of Safek Tumah and Rosh Hashanah is different than the halacha of Safek Tumah and Rosh Hashanah, and so there we have a halacha that the Dalet Amos that's close to the Rosh Hashanah, that Dalet Amos near the Rosh Hashanah, has a status of Rosh Hashanah as far as tumah. Aval hacha, but over here, when we're talking about the public just being able to be in that area, Zimnin Dedachki B'nei Rosh Hashanah, sometimes it's very crowded. The people in the Rosh Hashanah don't have space. Va'ayli Tuva, and they're going to go into the alleyways even more than that. They'll go even more than Dalet Amos, and so therefore even more than Dalet Amos away, they can prevent them from putting up those doors. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, "V'lo es hasada ad sheyeheba tisha kavin lazeh v'tisha kavin lazeh v'chulu." You don't split up a field unless you have enough field that there is enough space for this one to plant 9 kav of seed and for the other one to plant 9 kav of seed. And then the Mishnah goes on to bring the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says it's actually half that amount. It's 9 half kav for this one and 9 half kav for the other one. And the Gemara says, "V'lo pligi." Actually, the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda are not arguing. Marki Asrei. Each one is going according to his locale in terms of what the standard minimum size of a field is. And the Gemara says, "Bebavel mai." Well, what about in Bavel? The Mishnah is talking about in Eretz Yisrael. In Bavel, how large is the minimum size of a field that they can force to split? Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, "Be radu yom." It's the amount of field that can be plowed in one day. And the Gemara says, "My be radu yom." What does it mean? The amount of field that can be plowed in one day? Iyoma zara. If you're saying that in one day you can plow it during the planting season. During the planting season when they plowed, so then it was softer earth. It was easier to plow. Let's say you're saying that it takes one day to do that. So then that's problematic. Trey yoma karva lo have it, because then in the plowing season when the earth is harder, it's not going to be a full 2 days. Essentially, people did not like to hire for a partial day. So that creates a problematic situation. If you have a field which takes 1 day in the planting season to plow, and then let's say it takes 1.5 to plow in the plowing season, that's problematic. No one's going to want that because they don't want to hire workers for a partial day. And the same in the reverse. Yoma karva, let's say it takes 1 day to plant it by karva when it's the plowing season, so then Yoma dezar lo have it, then it's not even going to be a full day in the planting season. And the Gemara says, no, there is a way to even it out, so to speak. Yoma de karva, you could say we're talking about 1 day in the plowing season, and then de kariv vitani, we're talking about where he plows and then plows again. We'll see Rashi in a moment, a couple versions to understanding the Gemara. And the Gemara says a second answer, if you want, they could say Yoma dezar, we're talking about where it takes 1 day in the planting season, but bahadure, but we're talking about an area which is more difficult to plow, and that evens it out. And Rashi explains, Hachi Garcina, and this is the proper text, Bei Radu Yoma Mai, what does it mean that it's 1 day to plow? Yoma Zara Tre Yoma Karva Lo Have. If it's 1 day during the planting season, it's not even going to be 2 days during the plowing season. Yoma Karva, and if you're talking about a day of the plowing season, Yoma Dezara Lo Have, it's not even going to be 1 day in the planting season. Iboy Sema Yoma Dezara, it could be we're talking about 1 day in the planting season. Biasra Dekar Vitani, we're talking about a place where they plow and they plow again. Or we could say we're talking about on the day, it takes 1 day in the plowing season, and we're talking about where it is a more difficult area. And Rashi explains, Iyoma dezara b'shas hazera, meaning at the time of planting, hu noach lachrosh, it's easier to plow. Shekvar nechareshes b'shas hanir, it was already plowed during the plowing time. But if that's the case, Rashi continues, Trey yome karva lo have, it's not going to be 2 full days in the plowing season. Kolomar, what it means to say is, b'shas hanir hech yiskor shavorim, at the time of the plowing, how are you going to be able to hire oxen drivers? Ein bo kadei meleches beis yomim, you don't have enough work for 2 days. V'yesh bo yoser mechdei meleches yom echad, but it's more than 1 day, and that's problematic. And the other way also, v'biyoma karva, if it's 1 day in the karva season, in the plowing season, shal shas hanir kamer, if that's what you mean the time of plowing, lo have a yom dezar, it's not going to be a full day by the planting season. Again, v'hech yiskor shavarim b'shas hazar, how are you going to hire the animals at the time of the planting? And the Gemara says, this is the first way, the first version Rashi has, if you want, I could say we're talking about in the planting season, it's 1 day. Now your question was that in the plowing season, it's not going to be a full 2 days. It's a place where they actually plow twice during the plowing season. Ika biyom dezara tre yom karva. So then in one day in the planting season will be 2 days in the plowing season. V'bay same, if you want, I could say yom karva, it's 1 day in the plowing season. Udukamer lo have a yom dezara, and you said that it's not going to be a full day by the planting season. But hadure askin, and we're talking about land that is difficult to plow. She'eretz kasha, meaning the land is hard. V'yesh ba malos umordos, there's inclines, it goes up and down. V'yesh torach b'shas hazera k'shas hanir, it's just as difficult to plow in the planting season as in the plowing season. Lishna achrina ipcha garsina, now there's another version where you just reverse it. V'bay same a yom de karva, if you want, I could say we're talking about 1 day by the plowing season, or dekashalach yom dezara lo have, and your question was it's not even 1 day by the planting season. Biasra de kariv vitani, it's a place where they plow twice b'shas hazera. During the planting season, at that time, they actually do 2 plowings. That's what evens it out. Achas kodem lazriya, v'achas la'achar azriya l'chasos azroim. They plow before they put in the seeds, and then they plow again after putting in the seeds in order to cover the seeds. V'ba yisayim, and if you want, I could say again in this version here, v'ba yisayim a yoma zara. If you want, I could say it's 1 day in the planting season. With amrit trey yome karvelo haven. Now you asked that it's not a full 2 days by the plowing season, but hadure askin, and we're talking about a more difficult area to plow. Sheyesh torach gadol b'shas hanir. It's difficult at that time. V'yom zara have it trey yom karva. So 1 day in the planting season is 2 days in the plowing season. And Rashi says v'loshen zehagan. This second version is the proper version. And the Gemara continues, Davla by a cistern. Rashi says, Davlam yeshlehen bor shemimenu mashkin sada. Let's say partners have a pit and they use the pit to irrigate the field. Now they want to divide up. So how much does it have to be per person in order to be enough to force a division? Amar of Nachman says, Bei dalu yom, it has to be enough to irrigate for 1 day. Rashi says, Bei dalu yoma at sheyehebo kadei lahashkos sada, kadei pu'ulas yom lazeh, or kadei pu'ulas yom lazeh. It has to be enough to irrigate a field in order of 1 day of work for this one and 1 day of work for that one, mishum schar poel, in order to pay the wages of the poel. And the Gemara continues, Pardesa, what about when they're dividing a vineyard? Rashi says Pardesa is a kerem, a vineyard. Amar Avua de Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, says, Bas shloshes kabin. It has to be enough that you can put in seeds, 3 kav worth of seeds. And Rashi says, Gimel kavin l'cholecha, that's 3 kav per each one when they divide. L'fi cheshbon sasayim kechatzer hamishkan. That follows the cheshbon, the calculation of 2 sa, that follows the calculation of the size of the courtyard of the Mishkan. And the Gemara continues, Tanya nami hachu, if a brisa like this as well, that it's 3 kav. It says in the brisa, Omer l'chaveiro minos bekerem ani mocher loch. Let's say a person says to his friend, I'm selling you a portion of this vineyard. Sumches omer lo yivchos mi gimel kavin. Sumches says it can't be less than the amount of space to plant 3 kav of seeds. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Ein elu ela different navias. That's just words of prophecy, meaning what you're saying is something with no real reason. There's no logic to saying that it should be 3 kav. And the Gemara continues, Bebavel mai, what about if they're dividing up a vineyard in Bavel? Amar Rava bar Kisna says, to los atziyasa, it's 3 rows, b'nei treisar gufni, which have 12 vines each. And Rashi explains, Ein elu ela divrei nevias below time. There's no reason for what you're saying. Utsi says, Kol yud beis gefanim kari utzia. Every 12 vines is called an utzia, so that's what it means essentially, 3 rows of vines. And the logic over there is, Kihechi derafik gavra b'yom. It's the amount that a person can hoe in 1 day. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Avdimi de min Chaifa. Rabbi Avdimi from Chaifa said, Miyom shechara Beis HaMikdash, from the time that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Nitla nevuah min haneviim, prophecy was taken from the prophets, v'nitna lechachamim, and it was given to the chachamim, it was given to the wise. The Gemara says, Atu chacham lav navi, who is a wise person, can a wise person not be a navi? What does that mean? The Gemara says, Hachikamar, this is what it means. Afal pisha nitla min ha-neviim, even though prophecy was taken from the Neviim, min ha-chachamim lo nitla, it was not taken away from the chachamim. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ameimar says, v'chacham adif min navi, the chacham is actually greater than the navi. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'navi levav chacham, it says the navi has the heart of wisdom. Now, mi nisla b'mi, who's the one that's dependent upon whom? Havayomar katan nisla v'gadol, you're always going to say that the katan, the lesser one, is dependent upon the greater one. So it's navi levav chacham, it sounds like the navi is dependent on the chacham as if the chacham is greater. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya says, Teda, you should know that this is true. And Rashi explains, Teda shelo nitla min chachamim, you should know it's true that nevuah, prophecy, was not taken from the chachamim. The Amar Gavra Rabba Milsa, because sometimes a great person will say something, Umesamra Mishmei, the Gavra Rabba Achrina Kavasi, and it will be said over in the name of another great person just like him. The idea is, how did he know the same thing that this other great person said? It must be through some kind of prophecy. Amar Rava says, Umay kosher, but what's so difficult? V'dilma tarvayu b'nei chad mazlaninu, maybe they were both born under the same mazel, and that's why they essentially clearly said the same thing. Elamar Rava, rather, Rava says the proof is as follows. Teda, you should know. Diamar Gavra Rava Milsa, that a great person can say something, Umisamra, and then it is said, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis.